Good morning and welcome everybody. We'll give everybody a few minutes to kind of filter in here. And you guys can see my screen okay still?
Yes.
Excellent. Good morning, Joe. Welcome back.
Morning.
Hey, Joe. I was
How's it
feeling
going?
bad last week. I forgot to tell you that we were taking a break before the holiday.
Okay, word.
Anyway,
It all
sorry, I
worked
forgot to
out.
tell
It
you.
all
Joe is
worked
one of
out.
our awesome longtime participants. So we usually let him know if we're not going to be around.
Regular Joe is my nickname, apparently.
I think I actually reached out to him as well. So I don't know if you
I
remember,
got
Joe,
it.
but
We're good. Yeah, it's
yeah.
all good.
Yeah, I
Oh,
reached out to you
wow.
right
Got some new
before
faces
just
in
because we had
today.
postponed.
Christopher and Alexa and Erica. Hello.
Well, we got a full audience. We'll give a minute or two before we kick things off. You guys should be able to see my screen here. We start things off with a weekly poll, which we'll dive into in a moment. Looks like Pam is going to be joining us. She's a regular too. So we'll just give another minute or two for people to kind of filter in. And actually, while we're waiting, why don't we introduce our guest speaker here? We are super excited to have Hillary Carpio come in from San Jose at an early hour. She doesn't think it's early, but for the majority of us here that are East Coast based, it's very early. But really appreciate Hillary coming out as the director of ABM at Snowflake. And obviously, we've all heard about Snowflake's success and growth. Megan, they were a Serious Decisions Award winner, ROI winner as well.
Yeah, I want to say both Program of the Year and ROI Award. And that ROI Award, there are literally a couple of hundred companies that compete for that each year. And it's a tough prize to win. So clearly they're doing something pretty special.
And Hillary's kind of reinvigorated it in her last 2 years there. And we're really excited to hear more about what's polish you've put on the program there, because it seems like everywhere you turn, it's like, oh, Snowflake's the standard of this, Snowflake's the standard of that. So, and you guys have probably seen Hillary speak at B2BMX or the ABM in event day that Content for Demand hosts as well. So, so welcome, Hillary.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
All right. Well, why don't we go ahead and we'll start with the poll, and then we'll flip it over to you, Hillary. But each week I ask a poll in and around account-based marketing, and these polls are a bit challenging because they have to be very simple for people to understand, and you're limited to the number of characters that you can put in. But one of the themes that I've been hearing recently a lot is, especially from our sales brethren, is they quote unquote say, "Where are the leads?" And they're asking that of marketing. And at the same time, we're kind of balancing the account-based side of things. And for us that are passionate about account-based, our mindset is over on the account-based side, but in fact, a lot of people are getting measured on leads as a model. So I had asked that question more broadly, not necessarily what should people be measured on, but what are they actually measured on today if they are quote unquote doing ABM. And the 4 choices I gave was 1, a lead-based model, 2, an ABM model, 3, both, and then 4 was the other category. And you could see we had a decent number of votes, and we had a lot of interaction below. I suspect that this number of primarily lead model is underreported here. I think a lot of people still get rated and ranked against a lead-based model. I was a little surprised that as many people said that they were primarily measured on ABM at the executive level. I think that's a great trend if true. And I think the trend is going to be in that direction of heading toward the account-based marketing. But maybe before I go to the comments, Megan, what's your reaction to what you saw here?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the primarily lead model is likely underreported. We've definitely, created a monster with marketing teams needing to be focused on volume of leads, and I think that it's even tougher when they're in an environment where there is a fixed universe of companies and where more and more, I just saw a great statistic from Gartner, right, from their CMO study that said most CMOs are looking at their primary growth source being existing customers. This model doesn't really help you there, right? So it's unfortunate, but I think it's also a tough change to make, because it's like, well, if it's not leads, what is it? And how do you make that direct connection to pipeline and revenue, which is the way that most marketing organizations are expected to show their contribution to the business. So when it becomes something a little more complicated and harder to make that direct tie from action to money, I think that's a hard habit to break. And for reasons I'm sure, marketing leaders don't want to completely shift away from pointing to the money. So tough one. But Hillary, thank you so much for joining us today. We're super happy you're here. I'd love to get your take on this one. How are you looking at measuring your program? Maybe we can start things off there.
Yeah, I have a very strict don't measure me on leads policy. We have a phenomenal demand gen team that is focused on leads. That's what they do, and they're great at it. And my team sits alongside them, really funneling the efforts that demand gen does, the efforts that partner marketing is doing, field marketing, and the SDRs, figure out how do we concentrate into those efforts into the accounts we care about most. So then we look at, if we are concentrating our efforts into those accounts, what is the multiplier of effectiveness in those accounts compared to when we don't? And so we can look at when we're partnering with the SDRs on our 1-2 punch, they're seeing 3x the conversion rate into meetings that they are without us. So really looking at side-by-side metrics to see how we're affecting the rest of the organization.
Awesome. And just wrapping up this poll here, and we'll go down to the comments of what other people are seeing. Here, this person was talking, Karen was talking about pipeline, and I think she was looking a little bit more forward looking about what should people be evaluated on. And I don't disagree here. MQLs are old school. And yeah, I think that's a very good observation. And then Mark down here does a lot in measurement. He had mentioned something about deal velocity, and maybe Hillary, do you guys measure your velocity of those cohorts that you talked about, like where you're involved in and where you're not, or how does that work from your perspective, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, we have in the past, and we are working on it now. The place that this gets tricky is the way we do ABM at Snowflake. We have a hybrid approach, but our bread and butter are the AEs nominating accounts for us to work on that they it may not be their, say, top 2 accounts, but it's accounts that they're having trouble getting into on their own or need additional support with. So the velocity metric, deal size metrics can be a little bit tricky because it's not exactly an unbiased sample, right? It's deals that are already, say, slow in nature and need some help moving along. A deal that's already really large, they want extra eyes on it. So I don't lean on velocity as a consistent metric. I just don't really feel like it's unbiased.
Yeah. Well, Hillary, you know what? I think it can be a double-edged sword, right? I'm glad to hear you say that, because I think this is a tricky one. I understand what Mark's saying here, but in some cases, in an account-based scenario, you're actually expanding the pie of what's in the deal. So the more you add, the bigger the financial value of the deal. It can take longer. You may be adding stakeholders if you're adding, offerings or buying centers or whatever it may be. It takes longer. It's going to take longer to close. In the end, you're making more money, but it may take a little longer. So I like this one if you've got a very consistent buying process and you really know, like, hey, it slows down here because of something we are or aren't doing, or that our buyer needs that we haven't historically provided, whatever it is. And you can make an improvement to that and sort of watch in that phase, that velocity go up. But I think measuring deal cycle time is saying shorter is always better. Maybe not, right?
Well, I think you can look at it too. And I know you and I were talking about this before we started. There's people classify ABM differently, right? So when I'm referring to ABM and maybe velocity is not the best metric, I'm talking about these 1-to-1 really boutique campaigns that are nominated by sales. When we look at more of the programmatic ABM side, where we're taking a list, pulling it down by intent of the timing is right, and then we're going in with a more targeted demand gen approach, velocity might make more sense because you're pulling in accounts that are ripe for an opportunity. Therefore, they're more likely to move quicker than those that are just stone cold that are must-win accounts for sales.
Yeah, well, and you mentioned that you partner with a number of different functions within the organization. Can you share with us sort of how ABM is touching a bunch of different parts of the revenue ecosystem?
Yeah, so sales is first and foremost our primary customer, but we work with the full go-to-market team to ensure that we're cross-functionally aligned. So we're now working with our SDR organization. So our ABMer, SDR, as well as AE are meeting on a bi-weekly to monthly basis to ensure that we're all three saying the same thing to the same people in the account, same line of business, same subsidiaries. And then we also have started working with field marketing. So we have a tier of ABM within our organization that field marketing is committed to do one-to-one events within these top tier accounts. And then we also do regional events for our lower tier accounts and our programmatic accounts. And then we've also started working with partner marketing, where we have a few ABM campaigns that have between 5 and 20 accounts in them, as well as one-off campaigns that are bringing partners in within our Fortune 1000 accounts to get their support as well. So we're aligned across all functions. And we also work with our demand gen team to ensure that we're driving registration and attendance to our key events in the accounts that have been nominated by sales as well.
Yeah, I'd love to ask a little bit more. The partner piece is one that I don't see a ton of companies doing, but I mean, something like 75% of companies go to market at least partly through a partner, right? So it seems like kind of a missing piece in a lot of ABM programs. How did that sort of get started for you? Any kind of lessons learned you could share with people about that particular alignment point?
Yeah, it's something that's really challenging. And I've been asked for years at different things I've spoken at of, hey, are you doing this for partners? How can we do this for partners? And Snowflake is the first place where we've really had the rubber meet the road and brought it to life. I'm really fortunate to have big advocates of ABM on the partner marketing side that are interested and willing to help build this. But we're working with GSIs on some of them, tech partners on some of them. And really it's a manual process, right? Sitting down with the partner marketing person on the other side and saying, what are the joint accounts that we have? It's all driven by sales. So our policy that I put in place is that we will not do a partner marketing ABM program if it's not a topic that's been brought up by the Snowflake sales team. So my team kind of funnels that response back up. I'll bring it to the partner marketing team and say, here are the 5 topics that we need additional support in. Which partners are best aligned to handle those? Then we'll go out and start figuring out where are the joint account lists, what is the joint messaging, what is the joint content? And then we've built like a play, for lack of a better term, where we do our joint advertising. We have a one-to-one page for each of the 5 to 20 accounts with content from both. We have a little bit of direct mail that's involved, as well as an event that we put on. Sometimes we pull in yet another partner for the event and drive attendance from both of those, and then bring them down into the SDR org, get some meetings in them, and then measure the pipeline and opportunity that comes out of it.
Yeah, that sounds like a great program. Do you feel like it's working pretty well?
It's working phenomenally. Yeah. Working really well.
Sure.
You've been there for almost 2 years now in your role, and probably have learned a ton in that process. And thinking about the others that are on the call that may not be as advanced as you, any advice or lessons learned as part of that process that, you know, looking back or reflecting on those 2 years of, wow, I wish I didn't have, do this, or that was a mistake, or wow, this really worked well. What would you offer there in terms of advice?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I found is you can't focus on replicating someone else's program, and what worked at one company may not work at another. It's about what advocates you have, because not everyone is, quote, a believer in ABM, and not everyone is willing to step aside from the metrics that they hold so close to themselves and measure themselves on and have gotten promoted on in the past. So when I was at Fortinet, I was leading demand gen. ABM was not part of my title. It wasn't part of my job. It's just something I created on my own. And now at Snowflake, I have a team of 12 people doing it. So I know both sides of that spectrum. And in both cases, the consistency is find that one person who's your advocate and start with them and build a program with them. For me at Snowflake, it was the SDR organization, same at Fortinet. And then one by one, as you build that, hey, look what we're doing. Hey, it's working. Other organizations come in and start believing, oh yeah, like maybe I can work with them too. And that's how we've essentially built bridges across sales operations, field marketing, SDRs, all of them, to be an integrated function. So just find your advocate and just start with them.
Have you noticed any nuances regionally, either within the US or outside of the US compared to the US, that would be, kind of important lessons learned as well?
So we break our team up, aligning into sales. So I have a team in New York working with the reps on the East Coast, Central, and West. So that's how we tackle the nuances across the countries. We're aligned into the field marketing organizations, sales organizations, SDR organizations there. So we don't run into that as much, but we do have the East Coast are our early adopters. They're big fans of ABM and advocates. And then as we move across the coast, we're working on getting more and more more and more support there. But we cover 88% of our reps choose to be involved in ABM. They're not required to, but 88% choose to.
That's interesting. So what are the other 12% when they don't choose ABM, they're kind of on their own then, or?
Well, we have our demand gen marketing team as well, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. You have some AEs that, maybe they only have a few accounts, maybe they're much larger accounts and they have really strong relationships and they don't need or want additional support. Could be reps that have just onboarded and we haven't gotten far enough into their journey to get them set up. There's always a rotation there, but I'd say 88% is a number we're really proud of for being an opt-in organization.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I guess if you didn't have the opt-in, you would get that number regardless. So the fact that you're measuring it is very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Curious to know if there's a connection between participation in ABM activities and quota attainment or over attainment. Are you tracking that at all, or is that something you've seen?
It's something to definitely look into. I'll have to dive into that a little bit further with my upcoming QBR.
Yeah, I've seen it in companies where they weren't as successful at recruiting their friends in sales into their ABM program, where they said, you know what, I think it might help to sell the program if we connected the, hey, if you take advantage of what marketing's doing, your chances of being over quota are higher. And they did find a connection. So
yeah, that's a
really changed some minds.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that for this upcoming.
One of the big struggles that we see, and you mentioned the different aspects of ABM, one-to-one, one-to-few, one-to-many. We all hear the buzzword personalization at scale, and you've got a team of 12, so you're probably a lot deeper than a lot of other companies. But what have you learned there that it works well or doesn't work well as it relates to the personalization of ABM? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, so lately my mantra has been to truly have a personalized experience. You should be able to take the company name off the page and the recipient should still know it was built for them. So the content that you're delivering, the events that are on the page that you're inviting them to, we have a note from our sales rep on the page that's just for that company. That is personalization. Now the at scale piece is how efficient can you be with your resources? So putting the programs together, we've connected Uberflip, 6 Sense, and Intellimise together to build this engine where it's not that it's one-to-many, it's that the one-to-one experience is delivered upon page load. And so it's, to me, a different approach than one page is to all of one industry or all of one persona. And then we've also generated one-to-one content for almost 200 accounts that we're putting on these pages as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's significant.
Who helps you out with content? Are you working with product marketing? Do you guys do that yourselves? Do you have partners from outside? How do you do that?
We do have a great relationship with our content marketing team, which sits under product, and we do funnel back information from sales on what they're missing and what they might need. However, as the company's grown, their focus is on building the content calendar to support the broader organization, not necessarily specific accounts. So Meg on my team has built this phenomenal engine where we have kind of puzzle pieces of if it's X industry, X persona, X competitor, X partner, we can put them together into a custom piece of content, and she generates those for the team into PDFs. They all have use cases with similar customers and things like that where we can put them on our pages. So that's how we're doing it.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Very organized. And we just, John, I saw you put in chat, opening it up to questions, and would love for people to feel free to go off mute or chime in on chat or raise your hand, however you want to do it. But we'd love to hear your questions. But I'd be curious to know, Hillary, you mentioned kind of coming in and kind of taking over the last 2 years. What things have changed the most based on your understanding of the previous program to what you've put in place?
Yeah, a lot has changed. The team was previously measured on engagement. And now we have a full account funnel that I was mentioning in the beginning of the call. So really tracking engagement lift on the pages, how many pages they're going to after they see an ABM ad or an ABM page. Are they going and registering for other things from the demand team and field marketing? Looking at the meeting rates and opportunity rates within the SDR org with ABM. We're looking at coverage as a whole, as well as attendance to the big events we have for our demand gen team. So we have a whole host of things, but it really comes down to meetings opportunities within these top accounts. How many are we penetrating? And then for our customer accounts, how many are we creating new opportunities within our existing customers, especially in our Fortune 1000, where we're looking at additional subsidiaries and lines of businesses.
Are you doing all that measurement within Salesforce or within a separate database? Like how, that's a lot to measure there.
Yeah, so I feel really fortunate. I do work at a data cloud company.
Right. Right.
So we can pull all of our information. We do use Snowflake internally. We call it Snow House. We pull all of our information in there and visualize through Tableau. And then I have great counterparts on the data science team who help bring it all together. So that's the primary difference, but how we measure reflects how we do our programs now. So instead of only working with sales, where I mentioned we're working cross-functionally with the entire go-to-market marketing function. And that's been a giant overhaul as well. And then instead of just doing one-to-one, we now have a 3-tier system where we have more of a reactive program based off of intent that's programmatic. We have our one-to-one, and then we have our highly strategic accounts where they're year-long programs, only 5 accounts per RVP on our majors organization. And so we can apply that structure across both the enterprise and majors orgs.
We do a lot in and around measurement of ABM, and that is a true luxury to have kind of a team, B, kind of a dedicated outside system. Maybe 10% of companies we find are doing like a separate database from Salesforce, from, you know, whatever marketing automation system you're using, Marketo, Eloqua, whatever the flavor of the day is, and dumping it all back into a database. But to have a team to be able to do that, that's fantastic that you have that capability.
Yeah, it's part of why I came to Snowflake. Could use our own product.
Yeah, I could definitely see the value in doing that. I don't know if you're are you allowed to talk about tech stack, or is that something that you don't get involved with? Oh, okay. Are you finding, just out of curiosity, what are you seeing tech stack wise, or what have you invested in that's you're like, wow, this is really, really valuable to me or to my sales organization?
Yeah, Bombora tends to be the starting point for us. So when we go to sales to talk about what accounts to work on, we'll bring workload information of what these accounts are surging on, when might be the right time, and what we should talk to them about. And then we pair that with 6 Sense as well to get a little bit more granular into branded key terms. So that's really important on the intelligence side. We also work with Lead Genius to make sure we have an opportunity to go out and get information on contacts that may not be available through Zoom Info and other tools. And then Uberflip is the central point of our content experience. Been using them for a long time across multiple companies. And that's how we're able to operate at the scale we are, because we have content in one place that we can pull in really quickly, use smart filters, and generate these different experiences. And then Intellimize lays on top of Uberflip and pulls in the 6 Sense information as well, from segment to company size, demographics, all of that information. And then we use Rollworks and LinkedIn for our advertisements to get the word out. And then we are onboarding with a new direct mail vendor. They can't share yet, but we are pulling one in there that we're really excited about. And then we measure through Tableau, Salesforce, and Snowflake. I think that covers them all.
Got it. I think that answers Pam's question too, because she was asking about the measurement, like what tools to use. Sounds like Tableau and your own database. So
yeah. And I mean, Salesforce is good for a lot too, right? Every Monday I pull metrics out of Salesforce on meetings and opportunities created through our Snowmobile program, which is our program we do with our SDRs for programmatic. And I send it out to the SDRs every Monday straight from Salesforce. So there's nothing fancy about it. It's just a spreadsheet and Salesforce numbers. And then there's other things where I couldn't do it without a data scientist.
Yeah, I think that's about the size of it. I think for a lot of companies, right, is you get as much as you can out of the tools you have, like Salesforce, and then the next step up really does require specialized skills and some work with your data. But it's great you guys can do that and sort of show the impact that making that investment can have, right?
Yeah, but I do want to clarify that Snowflake is phenomenal. I'm super happy to have our own tool, and it is a game changer. But for those starting in ABM, you can do ABM and measure ABM with a spreadsheet, right? You can put in what are your conversion metrics without, what are your conversion metrics with, what is the change? And I think you have a starting point. And so that's one place I think people get really caught up is well, I can't start, or I can't do it because I don't have, Hillary, you have a data science team. I don't, you have Snowflake, I don't. We have to just work with what we have to start with, and then build that use case to be able to get more measurement tools in our system.
Yeah, that's a great point. We see a lot of that in Salesforce. You can actually build it in Salesforce as well, depending on the type of company you have. If you have millions of records, it becomes a little bit unwieldy. But if you have tens of thousands of records or hundreds of thousands of records, you can easily build it in Salesforce as well. You may not have the robustness that your data team has access to, but I think that's a great point, that you don't need a science team, but it's great if you do have that, to have that level of volume. Just going back for a second and thinking about the intent providers, and you mentioned Bombora. How much does your sales team get involved with intent data? And the reason I ask that is I have, and it might be leading the witness a little bit, but I have found that we treat it almost like an ingredient in the cake and not necessarily expose intent data to the sales team, because then you have to train them and they have to interpret the information. We've kind of flipped that model around a little bit and said, look, well, that's marketing's issue to deal with, of how to use that intent data. But you guys might do that very differently. Like you may have a different sales organization or a different use case. How are you seeing the use of intent with sales?
Yeah, it's available in a lot of different ways, and it really depends on each sales rep on how they want to use it. So we have some district managers who get the report directly and they sit down with their team and say, hey, there's these 3 accounts surging at 90 or above, go. Right. And we've had really good win use cases with that. I call it Bombora Blast, to just go after them and get them quickly. We also have some that never look at it. And then the majority of our cases, our ABM team, we meet with our reps weekly to monthly. Very few we meet quarterly. So when they sit down with them, they'll bring the Bombora report, sit down with them and review it together as a conversation topic to figure out which accounts to go after. And then our SDR organization is receiving output as well, and they use it there. So it's really however they want to use it. But when you're trying to gain traction with account-based marketing and trying to prove value, sitting down with a sales rep and saying, hey, these people are about to enter a buying cycle is a really easy way to show value quickly and to get their attention of where they should focus. And when the wins start coming in quickly and they get meetings at a higher rate than they were without it, it's just a great way to get your program off the ground and get moving.
Makes sense.
Yeah, definitely with you there. I think it's underutilized. I know it's like one of the fastest growing investments that companies are making, but to your point, I think once you just get a few of those proof points, it's like, wow, this really made my life easier. The Engagio team, they use it all the time, right? They'd come in and they'd say, okay, these accounts are, these accounts are interacting with our stuff, and these accounts are, showing signs of activity outside the company. And yeah, I mean, that'll get you a conversation faster than many things.
Well, you can use it for cross-sell of if they're surging on a different, marketing analytics versus data science. You can use it for churn. Are they surging on a competitor name close to the end of their cycle? I mean, there's a ton of intelligence. It's just what you want to make of it.
Is your Bombora report, is that a standalone report where they're logging in, or is that kind of automatically fed? I don't have a lot of visibility to that because we've kind of masked that from the sales team, and maybe we should not be masking it. What's the form factor that you're giving that to them? Or is it like an iframe within Salesforce that they can kind of read in real time what's happening with those accounts? Yeah,
we do have Salesforce fields. And if you have a personalization engine where you can connect Salesforce fields to your on-demand page personalization, then you can take, say, a workload or whatever they might be surging in and connect it to the content and message to show on a page. But we have it there. And then we also have automated exports that they can get into their email on a weekly basis as well.
Interesting.
Yeah. But to your point about when you're sharing it with sales, I think the other thing we have to keep in mind is I often find is when sales get a hold of it, they go, oh, I want this topic and that topic and that topic and another topic. And when you get too many topics in an intent report, it doesn't mean anything, because if they can be surging on just anything, then everybody's going to be surging. So I think you have to keep it simple of what are those really key things that might be surging. And then that's how sales is going to get the most value out of it.
Do you find with the intent data that you're getting to people after they've already engaged with somebody else, or have you been able to identify terms that get you in, like you said, about to enter a buying cycle, like so that you're early in the process? How's that working for you?
Both, but we've had plenty of instances, and this is where sales gets really excited, where we reach out to them and they're like, hey, I didn't realize this was an option. And then we are able to, we've had one that was in the middle of the POC with a very big competitor and turned them around, and within 6 weeks closed a deal.
Nice.
So just depends.
Yeah, very cool. Well, if anyone have any questions, I know we're almost at time. And Hillary, this has been such amazing information, but I just want to turn it over to the group here. Any other questions for Hillary? Give people a second. Oh, go ahead.
Reach out on LinkedIn if you guys think of anything.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Hillary, and I've really enjoyed your snow-related jokes like snowmobile and like
Oh.
snow house. Those really
Yeah.
get me a kick out of that. So how do you identify accounts? Like there's kind of like different tiers. There's like some accounts that you know that you may not reach out or put any sort of unscalable resources towards unless they show intent. And then maybe there's another tier of accounts that they're not showing any intent, but we know we want to go after them. How do you delineate those accounts? Like what qualifies as those accounts that you will put unscalable resources into, even if they don't have intent?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is what sales nominates. The long answer is what sales nominates depends on a lot of factors. One of those factors are the internal scoring models that we have. So our data science team has created customer MQA models as well as MQA models for non-customers, custom lead scores, et cetera. And then we have an account propensity score as well. So we'll use those to help guide it. The ones that are getting super strategic treatment are coming from the regional vice presidents that they know that that's going to be a make it or break it account for them in the upcoming quarters. But yeah, I think you can use, depending on what tech stack you have and tools you have available, you can determine wallet size, potential growth, ICP, just all of the basic factors to get yourself started.
Cool. So kind of like a mixture of account intelligence and like sales leadership.
Yeah, exactly. So I like to think that we don't choose the accounts, but we come to the table with all the information to help guide the decisions. I don't know, maybe like a financial planner kind of format, right? Here's all of the information. Here's the education. It's your choice what to do with it, but it's our job to make sure sales are informed with the information that we have available.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah,
I love it. And I love your hammock, Joe.
I know. I want to go lay in a hammock.
My daughter just dropped a beetle on my arm. I was like, what?
Gross.
Oh no. Anyhow,
Awesome.
well, Hillary, thank you again so much for being here, and everybody, thank you so much for joining us for Account-Based Friday. John, any last words before we let everybody get on with their Friday?
No, just echoing what you said. Thank you, Hillary, for investing the time, and yeah, look forward to next Friday. I think we've got Scott Vaughn, the recent Chief Growth Officer and CMO for Integrate. So he'll be joining us next week at 11 Eastern.
Right on. Thanks for having me. Nice to meet you guys.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great Friday.